Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Empowered in Tech, Women in Tech Netherlands, the podcast where we spotlight the voices of women driving change, breaking barriers, and redefining leadership in tech, and not only. I'm your host, Ilaria Severi, a branding and marketing strategist, social media expert, and a proud advocate for women in technology. Through this podcast, I get to have the most inspiring conversations with women who are not only shaping their careers, but reshaping the industry itself. Today's episode is all about inclusive leadership, and more specifically, how to grow from a first time manager into the kind of leader who builds trust, empowers others, and creates environments where people can truly thrive. We'll explore the often overlooked role of emotional intelligence in leadership, how to build safe and high performing teams, and what it takes to shape workplace cultures that prioritize authenticity, belonging, and impact. And this topic couldn't be more timely or I'd rather say personal because I had the pleasure of meeting today's guest, Silvia Román, at the Women in Tech Netherlands event in Amsterdam this past May. She was leading one of the roundtables that were organized around the event. And guess on which topic? On, of course, inclusive leadership. And the energy and thoughtfulness she brought to the discussion immediately sparked something for me. And well, we kept talking after the session and even we went to grab a coffee together. And, that conversation made one thing very, very clear. I had to have Silvia as one of our guest speakers. So, who is Silvia? Silvia is a senior product marketing manager at Booking.com, an inclusive leadership mentor, and an international keynote speaker. With 15 years of cross-industry experience, she's built her career around helping others reach their full potential by embracing authenticity and creating truly customer-centric products. She's also the former chair of the board at Lean in Netherlands, where she championed DEIB, gender equity, and women's empowerment. Through her leadership mentoring program and community for inclusive leaders, Seeds to Lead, Silvia supports emerging leaders and marketing talents with equal parts vision and vulnerability. And when she's not transforming the workplace, well, you'll probably catch her singing musical theater, which I also love, and she's currently mastering Never Enough from The Greatest Showman. And before we dive into this amazing conversation, I can't wait for it. We'd like to thank our sponsor, DMN Westinghouse, for their steadfast commitment to diversity and inclusion in tech. As a company that strongly aligns with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, DMN Westinghouse fosters a workplace where women can truly thrive, especially in technology and engineering. They're not only passionate about empowering women, they're actively expanding their team with a range of exciting open positions available. DMN Westinghouse is inviting talented professionals to join their innovative, inclusive workforce. We encourage you to visit their website to explore these opportunities and follow them on LinkedIn for the latest updates. Thank you, DMN Westinghouse, for supporting our mission and helping us amplify the voices of women in tech. Silvia, finally, here we are. I'm so excited to have you here today. Sorry for my voice. I have a little sore throat, but I'm very happy to welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I am doing really, really well. I am excited to be having these conversations. I know we connected quite nicely during the event, and yeah, excited to share a bit of my experience, to inspire other women, and yeah, to have a nice conversation today.
I'm sure of that. So let's kick this off. I would say let's take it back to when you first stepped into a leadership role. What did that transition feel like, and what surprised you the most?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that that I need to provide is a bit of context. I joined my first management role quite early in my career. So if I go back to to my first role, that was actually when I was still in university and I was already leading teams. And of course, that was exciting. It was something that I felt very proud of. And for me, it was definitely something that promotion was something that came as a result of the value that I was providing to the company, or a little bit on results, right? So it was a promotion based on results.
Okay.
And something that I was very excited about. But soon after the excitement end, after a couple months, I then realized that because I was jumping into this new role, let's say alone, I started to feel a little bit isolated compared to my peers that were on a different career level, but also nobody else from my cohort, let's say, was going through the same journey. So I realized that the challenges that I was going through, where before I had somebody to look up to, and I was expecting somebody else to solve problems for me, I was now expected to solve those problems for my team. So and I realized that that require a different set of skills, and whereas before I was a subject matter expert into certain topics, I was not longer a subject matter expert into this new management role, and instead I was left as a newbie, right? Or with kind of like that learning expectation. So that was a little bit on how my journey started. And it's been quite more than a decade since. So quite some experiences that I have gathered since that moment.
I totally feel you on this story, because it's a little bit what happened to me as well. I think, yes, because you bring results, then you get a promotion, you get into a leadership position. But often leadership positions can feel very lonely, indeed, because like you said, the person you were looking up to before, the person that was supposed to teach you, now expects you to kind of already know, or maybe it's not anymore that even that person that is managing you. But because of that position, there are a lot of expectations that are different from just you need to perform, because then you need to also take care of people.
Yes.
And that part, and I love that we're having this conversation today. I think it's what also, nobody really teaches you. I don't think there is really like a playbook. It's more really you learn by doing, and you learn by experience. And of course, by doing leadership courses, by doing sessions with people like you, that can really help. But I do feel that, and I believe a lot of people that are listening to us today will feel the same. And let's dive into, one of the things that I guess it's very, I would even say, I would dare to say impossible to teach, but something that we can get more aware of, and maybe we can practice like with more awareness, which is emotional intelligence, right? Why do you think, in your experience, like what role emotional intelligence played, but also why do you think emotional intelligence is often overlooked in leadership in leadership trainings, leadership positions, and how has emotional intelligence shaped the way you lead today?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And actually, I'm going to challenge your thought, because you're saying that it's something that cannot be taught. And I agree that it's not something that can be only taught from a theoretical perspective. So it's not something that you only read about, and then out of a sudden you're now with a high EQ, right? Exactly. An expert in emotional intelligence. Absolutely no. It does require that human aspect that as leaders or as new managers, we need to get in the field, right? We need to get in touch with our teams. And I would say, let me go back to your first question, because your first question was a little bit about why is this something that is not prioritized, or is something overlooked? I would say, based on my experience, a lot of times what we expect from new managers, or from that first management role, is to deliver those results, right? Which those are fair business expectations.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what we forget is that those results from a deliverables perspective are not going to be there if people are not in the right place, right? Emotionally, with their mindset. And so we forget to provide that additional support. So it's not only about the resources and the toolings and the whatever amount of supports that we provide from a system perspective.
Yeah.
Part of that support that we should be giving as management is that emotional intelligence aspect, which is making sure that our teams have the right motivation, that they're working in the right things based on their strength. But those are that type of information is not going to be given. That's the thing, right? We expect that with that role, with that new manager role, we're going to get a bit of a guideline in terms of team member A
Yeah.
These are the expectations. This is how they perform, which we know. We will know performance in terms of deliverables, but what we don't know is the background, right? We don't understand sometimes why is certain person acting in or behaving in certain way, why maybe the performance is not there. Is there something else going on? What actually drives this person? All of that is part of that emotional intelligence capability.
Yeah.
That whenever we are starting to practice or we actually master, we're able to spot that information by enabling those conversations, right? And that's not coming in a guidebook.
No.
And the reason why this matters, going to your second question, is because we're not going to get those deliverables. We're not going to get those business results if we're not able to understand how the team functions, not only as individuals, right? So how to motivate the individual, but also
together.
How to guide exactly the group dynamic, right? How to make sure that people are resolving conflict in the right way. And those are not, everything goes beyond those deliverables that we're sometimes just expecting as part of the OKRs, right?
Yeah. No, definitely. And oh my God, this conversation sparks a lot of thoughts, a lot of past experiences. One thing that I think, in a way, you cannot measure emotional intelligence. So, of course, it's hard to say, like, it cannot be put in the OKRs. But of course, team collaboration, team growth, in that sense also of team dynamics. I wouldn't say that, like, we should be judged or measured based on that only, because of course when it's about, because here we talk about people, and when we're talking about people, there are 10,000 scenarios that can happen. Every person is nuanced in a totally different way than another. Even if we talk about type A's, the achiever, they always do amazing jobs. Still, you can have two totally different type of type A's people. So it's really up to the manager to the person in leadership position to understand and recognize these differentiation in personalities, in ways of working. And definitely, it's something hard to measure, something hard to put in the OKRs, but in a way should be. Like, I believe a great leader should be the one that is able to learn and recognize each of their individual team members, the best approach, how to talk differently, or like what sparks the interest in that person, what sparks it in the other person. It's extremely difficult. I've been there myself. And I'm saying, I think that this is also work that goes a lot into like deep personal work. Maybe you can tell me how you see that, but you first need to dig deep into yourself to be a great leader, to be able also to recognize and spot patterns within people. Because I think that's where we go. Even it's like the evolution probably of emotional intelligence. And that's also where I think it's the most difficult part, because maybe some people can trigger you certain patterns that you yourself have, right? And so how do you face them? And I know this might not be directly related to emotional intelligence, but how do you see this?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, and it's actually making me reflect on the difference in between management and leadership, right? Because a lot of times we assume that because we got the management title, then we are automatically part of that leadership team or part of that leader, right? And if I go back to a bit more than a decade ago, when I got my first title as a manager, I can reflect back on my behaviors, and I was performing as a manager. It wasn't that I automatically swap into the behaviors that I have now as a leader and what I teach and what I support the community about. No, I go back and I was going by the book. I was doing the performance reviews. I was doing the admin check. Exactly. So doing all these administrative, not necessarily connecting with the people that I was supposed to lead, but I was managing them. I was managing them as a resource, and acknowledging that difference and acknowledging that, let's say, that jump is the first step, right? Because if we assume that because we got that title, then we are already supporting to the best of our abilities, then there is no room for growth, right? So that acknowledgement is the number one thing that that for me it took a moment, right, to reflect back. Yes, I can keep on going in this way, and I can keep on going in the corporate ladder, that then I will become sometimes the same behavior that I have seen in managers that I have had, which I am sure you have quite some years of experience as myself, and also the people listening. More than once we probably have experienced a manager that really is not supporting us to the best of its abilities, in terms of maybe they are good at management, but they are really not good leaders. So then I think that's the one thing, right? Reflecting back on who do you want to become? What type of leader do you want to become? And then that will create that self-awareness, right? And that going back to that investment in ourselves, into just understanding ourselves, investing in self-awareness, getting to understand what are our strengths or weaknesses, or, well, I don't actually like calling them weaknesses. I actually like calling them a bit more of opportunities for growth. But really understand ourselves as individuals, because the more we understand ourselves, then we're able to support others better, because we understand them as individuals.
100%. I think that's one of the key questions. And, well, I was lucky in my previous job. I got the chance to attend a leadership course that was offered by the company and given by this amazing Dutch woman. She's also actually into theater. She's an actress, but also she teaches leadership courses. And that course, I have to say, it was, well, I wouldn't say life-changing now, but it was pretty mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
And I think definitely I understood a lot of these things there. And one of the things, I would say two things. And the second one came up during our conversation when we had that coffee at that time. And the first one is that, yes, you need to ask yourself what kind of leader you want to be. So that's the first question you need to answer yourself. And answering that question, it will enlighten you a lot, and might be painful to a certain extent, because that also means you might have to change a few traits of or ways of doing that you've brought forward in your life that served you for certain purposes, but not now as a leader. And the second thing is the fact that you don't need to be in a management position to be a leader, right? You can be a leader without having the title of head of director, because leadership isn't based on how many people you manage or how many responsibilities you have. And I think that this is a concept that it's very hard to, let's say, see and accept. I think it's not probably talked enough, but also I understand for people who are not in managerial position, it's hard to see it that way. But some people are natural leaders, and it comes out. They just show it, right? What is your experience on that?
If I go back to my beliefs, that's something that was one of the biggest growth moments for me, acknowledging that we don't need to have a title to be a leader.
Yes.
And I actually went through a journey myself within my career, in which I have had a leadership experience from a management and title perspective. And I have also had experience in which I have led teams that are cross-functional, but they do not necessarily report to me. So I have needed to, this has required me to craft influential skills to be able to get things done without authority. And that is a different perspective. That acknowledgement is like a different perspective.
Oh, 100%.
And one of the things that that I tell my mentees is, how do you want to get this done, right? So it is a choice to do so from a transactional perspective, right? You can get things done transactionally, and then that is how, and to be more specific, what do I mean by get things done transactionally is, if we go to the workplace, hey, I need this, I have this project, we need to get it done because, well, that's part of the business, so on and so forth, right? So it becomes that transaction. I need something from you, person from another team, person from another craft, and you need to get it done because it's good for the business, and that's it, period, right? So that's one style, and it will get things done.
Yeah.
Now, where I believe we can step up and actually get even better at our influential and leadership skills without that authority is to make sure that people actually build those relationships. So rather than becoming a transaction, it becomes as part of a relationship. And there are a couple ways to get this done, right? Of course, when we talk about building relationships, you could say and argue this takes a lot of time, right? So how are we going to ever get them something done?
Yeah.
And this is where a little bit that balance comes into place, right? It doesn't mean that we're going to have 3,000 coffees up until I request something from you without authority. So there is an aspect of transaction in which there is some point in common in terms of why do we need to get something done. But also it's coming from a perspective that I know you. I understand what drives you as a person. I understand why you would want to participate in certain projects and what do you get out of it. Yes, the business matters and getting the results from the business matters. But why you as an individual will want to do a specific initiative or a specific task.
Why is it important to you? Right?
Exactly. What drives you? And I think crafting, and this is in the past couple of years, that's something that I have actually used a lot because of my role. In which we need to deliver go-to-markets by leveraging that influence with our authority with other craft and other departments, right? And by being able to understand what drives you as an individual and the type of work that you would like to do, then at the beginning, yes, it is uncomfortable, but the more you practice that skill, then whenever you get again that title, that management role, then it's like another layer because you can use those exact same skills with people that you have authority over.
Yeah. I think that's the sweet spot that if managers, leaders manage to get to, it's really like you can create really powerful and strong teams. I think probably that's because you combine that personal side into what motivates you, why it motivates you, into, okay, this is also what needs to be done. How can we make everybody happy?
Yes.
It is very difficult. It's a work in progress. And let's be also very honest that I think it's a lot about also company cultures. And not in just saying like there is in the sense of bad company culture, good company culture, but also not everybody's made for that company. Not everybody fits that one company culture. And that's maybe the main reason why they're also hard to lead, to manage, to bring with you. And that's fine. But let's say this brings me, I guess, to my next question about how do you, let's say in your experience, how can leaders build safe, inclusive, and at the same time, high-performing teams? So sort of like create their own inner culture. Because also I think there are layers of cultures in a company, like company culture, but also team culture. Because how happens that in some companies, regardless of there is that one company culture, but some teams thrive and they have high retention. And some people have people coming and going all the time, people unhappy. So clearly, it's not just about the overall space of the company, but the space of the team. So how do you create that space for people where they can thrive, they feel safe, they feel inclusive, and then they can also perform?
Yeah, very, very good question that you're bringing, especially in the current context, right? That there is an expectation from companies to 10x performance and to be even more productive. So very relevant question, I believe. And here is what I would like to add, that when we talk about safety, like psychological safety, inclusion, and all these, let's say, I had a manager once that called these the fluffy stuff. Very unpopular opinion, but yeah, he used to call this the fluffy stuff. But when we talk about all these, let's say the hard to measure behaviors, and we compare that to performance and deliverables, the reality is that they're not. There is a belief that they are disconnected, and they are not. They are actually very much connected to each other, because yes, we can have the deliverables, we can have the objectives of the company. How this all connects is the decision on how we decide to bring them to life, right? So we can have a list of to-do lists and get them scratched and have this, let's say, transactional way of working. That will have a cost. And if we only talk about business perspective, and this will have a cost in terms of the attrition that employees will have. This will have a cost in terms of productivity. We can assume that somebody's giving 100%, but actually they might be at their 80 because they're not feeling motivated enough to give that extra 20%, right?
Yeah.
And they are still delivering their things, but we could have gotten a lot more from an individual that is really highly motivated. If we only assume that that transaction coming from that, initiatives, deliverables perspective is enough, then that's all we're going to get. So it is a bit of a balance. Now, so the question was also, how do we as a new manager, how do we as leaders enable that balance? It starts with us. It starts with us setting up the space for people to be themselves. And that means, we can talk a little bit about the life cycle of the employee, but it's up to us to establish the playing field. So there is an aspect of company culture, and there might be companies that have these, let's say, inclusive point of view, like a very strong point of view in terms of inclusion, in terms of the type of culture that they want to build. But that's where I believe things are changing, because us as as managers, us as leaders, we also have control over that. And it's not easy, but it is a choice. And we can choose to establish a culture within our teams in which people feel that they belong, that they can be themselves, that they, even if somebody, you touch upon being an A player versus a B player, or different personalities, people driven by sometimes by vision, other people driven by results and maybe details, that it's okay, and not everybody needs to be the same.
No, absolutely.
And that it's okay for everybody to coexist. So that's the role of us as leaders, to establish that playing field. And I'm going to add a conversation that I had with one of my mentees not so long ago, like a couple months ago. And which she actually asked me about how to balance, how to grow into being a leader that enables the results and things for the business, while also helping others to grow. And my answer was that we can choose to go the short term, so we can get those short-term results, or we can choose to have that long-term impact in people.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, 10 years from now, a decade from now, nobody will remember that we drove X amount of, we're both in marketing, so I'm going to take this example in marketing. What an amazing 17 campaigns that were launched on 2025 for X brand. Nobody will remember that.
Yeah.
Nobody in the team will actually remember, yes, the day that the year that was marked in my life is because we launched 17 campaigns. Nobody will remember that, but people will remember how we make them feel. So whenever we make that switch in our brains, then as leaders, it's not only about getting those things done, it's the how. And the how means establishing that playing field where everybody can be 100% themselves.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I think this is really key. And it's something that, especially today, where like you said before, of course, a company has to produce, to generate. And of course, if you work in marketing, it's always about numbers and about generating clicks, leads, you name it, users, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to be very good. And I say we because collectively, very good at going back to the essence of things, to remember that at the end, and it seems like so, I also had this sort of like realization some time ago, and I was like, it's so like simple, but at the same time, it's not. The fact that it's all about relationships, and it's all about how we make feel other people that we work with, that we are together with. Those results, those numbers are possible. Well, sometimes are possible even without the connection, but at what cost, first of all, and for how long? I don't think it's sustainable. Then at some point it becomes not sustainable in the long term. But imagine if then we're able to reconnect to the basics of society, which is basically networking, creating relationships, and sharing feelings, right? So definitely, it seems so simple, but at the same time, in the society, in the world where we live nowadays, I think we're getting so far and far away from feeling, from emotions, from real. There is a lot of connections because, of course, with social media, like that, we have 10,000 of connections every day. But which ones are the true connections, right?
100%, 100%, Ilaria. And if I just want to add, just to make sure that we're also bringing the business perspective, right? Because I understand that we as managers are being measured by that. So, and one of the questions, the early questions in kind of like the conversations that I have is, yes, but I'm being measured. So yes, I want to make sure I make the right decisions. I build those relationships, but I'm being measured by results. So how do I make that happen?
There is a pressure there. Yeah.
There is a pressure. So let's acknowledge that pressure. And there's actually an article that I'll share the link later, but there's an article by HBR, by Harvard Business Review, that actually compare the amount of energy that it takes for a person that is fulfilled and comfortable to perform to a certain level, right? To perform a task, to make it very specific. And then they made the same comparison with somebody who is constantly feeling that they are not in the right place, that they do not belong, to call it specifically, but they are constantly trying to fit in, that they're constantly trying to hide a part of themselves, to fit. Exactly. And the amount of energy that it takes for these, for the second group is about 30 extra %, right? So we're losing productivity from people that are constantly, if they feel that they need to fit in constantly, that they need to, that they're not feeling welcome, that they're not feeling that they belong. Yeah, that is, let's say, if we only want to talk about numbers, that is productivity that we're losing as businesses, right? And that will impact the results.
Yeah.
So if we only want to take that perspective, right? Not only because it is the right thing to do to create that safe space for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I would like for you to tell us a bit more about, because you already mentioned your mentees. And I said it at the beginning, that you have your own program that it's called Seeds to Lead. Can you tell us more about the mission behind it and how you support early leaders on their journey?
Yes, absolutely. So I want to give you a bit of context because I started Seeds to Lead after a friend actually ignited this journey.
Okay.
Because she just got promoted. She was working in a very diverse company. And after a month in our conversations, she was ready to quit. She was like, I cannot do this. But she has been aiming to get this promotion for a couple years now.
Okay.
And I in a conversation, I actually asked, what's going on? What's happening?
Changed?
Why are you, what changed? Like, it's just a month and a half. And she pinpointed that one of the reasons why she wanted to work in that company, it was diversity. But when it came to leading diverse teams, she didn't know how to do that. There was a lot of conflict. People were different. What worked with one was not working with the other. So there was no one size fits all that she could follow to be able to feel that she was serving her team or helping the team. So she was about to go back to an individual contributor. Which, don't get me wrong, for some people that is the right approach, and
absolutely, and it's fine.
Some people are considering it's totally fine. But then that kind of like made me realize that there was an opportunity to support new managers stepping into this leadership role, into this management role. And instead of waiting for what it took me, right, more than a decade to become the leader that I am now, to instead of waiting a decade, why don't we accelerate and give everything, all the resources, all the support that these new managers need to really not only be more fulfilled, to drive performance within their teams, but to actually enjoy. right? So to not be on a Sunday night hating
Yeah.
the fact that Monday is starting,
Oh my
and
God.
to feel confident and know that they are really doing their best as a leader to grow and make sure that their diverse teams are fulfilled and happy.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think that's like that part is also important, like enjoying the journey and having someone that walks with you hand by hand, like in this case, someone like you, a professional like you. I remember when I also did in the past a similar jump to like very quickly, because I built in my previous company, I built a team, the whole marketing team basically. I was the first marketing hire, and then I left. When I left 8 people, and this happened throughout 5 years and a half, which is a long time, but it's also not such a long time, right? If you think about
Yes.
it, like in manager's life or in leadership's life. And man, I had many times like I was reading books trying to know what am I doing wrong, or like how can I motivate these people better. And then you feel like, but I've done my best, like I've tried everything, why is it still not working? You question yourself a lot if you are, of course, self-aware person. And I'm always work on myself. I have a career coach, I have a therapist, I have, you name it, like I like to work and improve all the time. I'm not perfect, but like anybody else, we all have our good side, good things and flaws, right? But it can feel very demotivating when you really feel like you're trying your best and it's not working out. And I think this is because if I talk, and when I was talking with other managers and leaders, like there was like very hidden question that normally you don't ask out loud, but you ask yourselves, like yourself, which is like, am I made to be a manager? Like, am I supposed? And I think that's a wrong question, because it's not about am I supposed, but like how, what, like changing your vision into, yeah, I don't want to be just a manager. I want to be a leader. And what kind, like going back to what we said before, what kind of leader I want to be. And then I think if you act with the right purpose and from a good place, because let's also be honest on this, the right people will follow. Let's be realistic that same as not everybody fits in a company or in a company culture, they might not be the right people to follow as well. And I'm not saying like everybody can improve, but let's be honest, like as not everybody can be your friend. At the same time, not everybody, you cannot create the same relationships with everybody for as hard as you try.
100%. And one of the topics that I like to bring also is how do we support as leaders? How do we support that transition for
Transition.
others, right?
Yeah.
Because if we only take that management role,
Yeah.
it's a matter of a checklist in which
Yeah.
you fit, you don't fit. But
Yeah.
as leaders, if our vision as leaders is to impact people's life, whether that is with the impact and enable, multiply what they do, work that they do, but also if the company is not the right one for them,
Yeah.
if this doesn't fit their career path, how do we as leaders enable that transition?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, no, thank you for saying that. I think that's very important. And again, it always goes back to who you want to be as a leader. If you want to be impactful, you need to, let's say, keep following your purpose. And then if it's exactly what you say, okay, recognizing maybe this is not the right company for you, but what can I do, or what can we do? Of course, here we're talking in ideal terms. It's not always so easy, and especially like we were saying before, in today's companies, in today's world, where we feel the pressure to perform.
Mhm.
So being able to kind of keep being you, keep following your purpose while also bringing results. I think that's let's recognize that it's not easy, but it's not impossible either. It's all about self work and, like we just showed, asking for the right support and help. Like, for instance, Silvia here with us. We almost got to the end of this episode. Silvia, is there anything else you would like to share to our listeners about leadership, or, things you have learned we haven't mentioned yet?
Of course, I I have really enjoyed the conversation so far, and I guess from what I have experienced, we can keep on talking for another hour. Yeah, let's wrap it up. And I would say, if I can leave one message to our new managers in the audience, is that change doesn't need to happen only from the top to the bottom, right? If we do believe that this is the right approach, if anything that we have talked so far resonates with them, with you, then we don't need to wait for the company culture to change from the top bottom. We can make that happen. And as leaders and as managers, we do have that decision. We do have that choice. So if this is something that they would want to do, they don't need to do it alone. It is something that they can do, right? So you can take that approach, but it will take, well, of course, twice as much time. And this is where the power of a community, the power of being supported comes into place. And if you want to take that step, just make sure that you surround yourself with the right people, with the community that can support and walk with you to accelerate that journey, because it is possible. I have seen it. I have been in teams where, I wake up on a Monday morning and I'm like, okay, this is, what are we going to do this week? How are we going to make changes this week? It's motivating. I have seen both sides. And when we are fulfilled as leaders, it's amazing how much energy we can drive and how much impact we can make for the business and for the people. So that would be it.
Beautiful. And I love that we are ending this episode talking about community, because I feel that's one of the purposes also of communities like Women in Tech Netherlands, of many other communities out there, where we can share our experiences, we can share our challenges, our struggles, and somehow there will always be someone that is going through the same thing. And we just need to be more open at talking about it, I believe, and not feeling guilty or judged. We're all here to learn. We're all here, I believe, coming from a good place to be the best version of ourselves, but also to enable others to be the best versions of themselves. Well, Silvia, thank you so much for this wonderful talk. I didn't have any doubt that it would spark so many different topics and conversations. I wish we could stay here forever, but I truly appreciate your participation.
Thank you very much, Ilaria. I have enjoyed this conversation so much. It made me reflect a lot, and it gave me a lot of energy to continue the day.
And I mean, if you're looking for a mentor, you are a newbie in the leadership position, or maybe not even a newbie, but you need some support, you can always reach out to Silvia. You can find her on LinkedIn as Silvia Román, or via email. If you want to share it now, or I can write it in the comments later?
Yes, absolutely. I will share it in the comments as well. And also, if they want to join the community, we have just launched it a couple of months ago. So happy to have them in the Seeds to Lead community.
Amazing. And also, thank you so much to all our listeners for tuning in one more time. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and even leave a review. It's like the little stars you can find on top of Spotify. That would mean the world to us. And of course, share it with someone who's on their own leadership journey. And remember, you don't need a title to lead, just the courage to show up. I would say support others and keep growing. Till next time.